Imagine losing your child in the most horrific way, with no answers for nearly 50 years. Sharron Prior's brutal murder shocked an entire community and left a family shattered. But after decades of heartache, advanced DNA technology uncovered a shocking truth that no one saw coming. What really happened to Sharron Prior? Who was the monster hiding in plain sight? Stay tuned as we dive into one of Canada's most chilling unsolved cases and the breakthrough that finally brought justice. For almost 50 years, one of Canada's most shocking unsolved cases puzzled everyone. Many lost hope of finding the truth, but the victims' parents never gave up seeking justice. Finally, with new forensic science and technology, the mystery was solved. Sharron Prior was born in 1959 in Montreal. Her mother, originally from Great Britain, moved to Canada as a child and met George, a Canadian Army man. They fell in love, married, and Sharron was their first child. When Sharron was nearly 2, her mum gave birth to twins, Doreen and Maureen. In 1962, George was relocated to Manitoba with the military, and the family moved to a quiet and safe neighborhood. They later welcomed a son, George Jr., but family tensions led to divorce in 1965. The mother and her children moved to Langley, supported by a military family program. Sharron grew up as a kind, caring, and compassionate girl who loved animals, often rescuing and caring for injured stray cats and dogs. She dreamed of becoming a veterinarian and enjoyed sports and arts. Her future seemed bright and full of promise. By 1975, Sharron was 16, navigating typical teenage life, loving trendy clothes, music, and dating John, a boy who had admired her since 4th grade. On March 29, 1975, Sharron spent the day preparing for Easter, painting eggs and helping her mom. That evening, she asked her mom if she could go to Marina Pizzeria, a popular spot for local teens. After getting ready, Sharron left with a friend, but they soon parted ways, and Sharron went to the pizzeria alone. When Sharron didn't arrive, her friends assumed she was delayed with John. Meanwhile, John was watching a hockey game at home, planning to meet Sharron later. But when he arrived at the pizzeria and found she wasn't there, he became worried. It was unlike Sharron, who was always responsible and punctual. Sharron's mother also began to worry when Sharron hadn't returned by midnight. Unable to call her friends at such a late hour, she anxiously waited until morning before reaching out. None of Sharron's friends, including John, knew where she was. Later, the mother learned of an attack near the pizzeria that same night, where a man had tried to stab a woman. The assailant was described as tall, dark-haired, with a mustache, wearing a ski jacket. Sharron's mom panicked, realizing the attack happened along Sharron's usual route. She rushed to the police, who immediately launched a large-scale search. Hundreds of locals joined the effort, but days passed with no sign of Sharron. Her family remained hopeful, though the chances of finding her alive were slim. The police had no suspects and struggled to find the knife-wielding attacker. On April 1, Sharron's mum saw a suspicious young man trying to take a newspaper off her neighbor's doorstep. When confronted, he ran. But the mother grabbed the newspaper and saw a front-page photo of a girl's body found nearby. It was Sharron. Her body was discovered by a local man who noticed signs of a break-in. Sharron's lifeless body lay in his driveway, partially clothed, with signs of severe abuse. She had been beaten, tied up, and left in the cold. Forensic evidence showed she had been held captive for days before her death, suffering abuse and strangulation. Despite the police's efforts, the tragedy left Sharron's family and community devastated. The details of her final hours remained a haunting mystery until recent breakthroughs in forensic science finally brought long overdue answers. The girl had died choking on her own blood, her ribs crushed as if someone had knelt on her chest. Forensic experts also noted she had suffered severe head trauma and internal bleeding, with stab wounds covering her body and her jaw broken on both sides. Her nose was smashed, and her cheek was torn by a knocked-out tooth. Hundreds of people gathered at the local church to bid farewell to Sharron Prior, while her grieving mother, overwhelmed with sorrow, could only think of bringing the killer to justice. Just 3 blocks away from where Sharron was killed, another similar crime had occurred. On July 9, 1974, 12-year-old Norma O'Brien was murdered on her way back from a closed pool. Her parents immediately reported her missing, and her mutilated body was discovered the next day. Both Norma and Sharron had been brutally beaten, partially undressed, and strangled, raising suspicions that the same maniac might be responsible for both crimes. But investigators had no solid leads. After Sharron's murder, another girl, 14-year-old Debbie Fisher, went missing while riding her red bike home. Her naked body was found the next day in the woods, killed by a blow to the head with a rock. A 17-year-old boy was arrested for Debbie's murder and confessed, but insisted he had no involvement in Sharron's death. Due to his age, his punishment was light, and he was only charged for killing Debbie and Norma. Despite gathering evidence, police struggled to identify Sharron's murderer. They questioned dozens of people and detained several suspects, including friends and acquaintances, but all had alibis. The investigation eventually hit a dead end, but Sharron's mother never gave up. She believed the killer must be someone local, familiar with the area. The police suspected that Sharron's killer might be young and living nearby, possibly with mental issues and violent tendencies. They even considered that more than one person could have been involved. Around the same time, another girl named Cheryl was attacked by a knife-wielding assailant who managed to escape. Police suspected this could be the same person responsible for Sharron's murder. The investigators concluded that the killer likely lived close by and was familiar with the area. He managed to move around without being noticed and left no evidence. They feared he was a sadistic predator who enjoyed luring and torturing his victims. Police began checking local residents with histories of violence, but focused on finding the man who had attacked Cheryl, believing he fit the profile of Sharron's murderer. The detectives were convinced they were dealing with a serial killer who was violent and dangerous, someone who needed to be stopped before he struck again. Despite their efforts, the killer remained elusive, always staying one step ahead. Back then, detectives didn't have access to the advanced tools we have today, like DNA analysis, security cameras, or phone tracking. Their work was slow, and the killer used this to strike again. 6 years after Sharron's body was found, another victim appeared, 12-year-old Tammy Lakey. The killer seemed to have shifted his focus to younger, more vulnerable victims after Sharron's death. Tammy's remains were examined by the same experts who worked on Sharron's case. They noticed the same pattern in the crime, which further supported the theory of a serial killer. On March 20, 1981, Tammy disappeared after leaving her grandmother's house. Her grandmother, feeling unwell, had asked Tammy to run to the store, but she never returned. Tammy's glasses were found on the sidewalk by her mother, who immediately called the police. A witness reported seeing a man in a beige coat forcing a screaming girl into a red car. That evening, Tammy was found barely alive, lying naked but covered with her clothes. Despite the doctor's best efforts, her injuries were fatal. Though there was no evidence of sexual assault, traces of male DNA were found on her clothes. The killer was careless and left behind plenty of evidence, but nothing led investigators closer to catching him. Similar attacks were reported in nearby areas, including the murder of 17-year-old Lisa Blais in Montreal in 1978. She was attacked just a few meters from her home after leaving a disco. The cases kept piling up, and the police struggled to find connections between them. In 2000, Sharron's mother urged the police to re-examine the case using new forensic techniques like DNA analysis, but she was devastated to learn that most of the evidence had gone missing in 1995. Only a few items remained, including Sharron's clothing and that of a possible suspect. Although they found a new DNA sample, it didn't match anyone in the database. Years later, in 2004, the police received a tip about a garage where Sharron might have been held captive. Investigators found nothing definitive linking the site to the crime. Another twist came in 2012 when someone offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to the killer. Although the hotline received numerous tips, none led to a breakthrough. The police revisited the attack on Cheryl, another young girl who had survived an attack and got a good look at the man. Under hypnosis, she identified the attacker as resembling William Patrick Fife, a convicted serial killer. However, Fife denied involvement, claiming his first murder was in 1979, 4 years after Sharron's death. Investigators also suspected Mike French, a violent member of a motorcycle gang. He lived near Sharron at the time of her murder and was rumored to have bragged about killing her. However, French was killed in a gang shootout in 1982, taking his secrets to the grave. Frustrated by years of dead ends, Sharron's family continued their fight for justice. Sharron's mother viewed this battle as not just for her daughter, but for all parents who lost their children to violence. In 2022, advances in genetic genealogy finally gave detectives a break. A DNA match linked the evidence from Sharron's murder to Franklin Romine, a man who had died in 1982. Further investigation confirmed that Romine's DNA matched the biological traces left at the crime scene. His past crimes, appearance, and proximity to the crime matched witness descriptions perfectly. Though Romine was long dead, the case was officially closed, and Sharron's family was finally told who had taken her life. After nearly 50 years, the truth came out thanks to modern DNA techniques and the relentless efforts of those who never gave up. This brings today's episode to an end. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Take care and see you next time.